In guitar news, George Benson's guitar shop is now live on Reverb. The iconic guitar player, George Benson. I know it's not exactly rock news, but man, George Benson is an incredible guitar player. And man, for all you rock players out there, if you want to challenge your playing, learn some George Benson licks, man. The guy plays a guitar, with what they call telephone pole strings. And back in the day, man, George Benson could just fly up and down the fretboard. Man, he is one of my favorite guitar players of all time. Man, nobody can sing a song or play a jazz, flavored guitar solo like George Benson. George Benson is an incredible guitar player. And if you're not familiar with his playing, I suggest listen to the album Weekend in LA. It's a double album. Yes, he sings some songs and there's some tender ballads on there, but there's also some incredible, tasty, melodic guitar playing. George Benson, just an incredible guitarist. And, back the album that sort of launched his career, he had been recording and doing, instrumental jazz guitar albums. And then he did the album Breezin. And that was the album that set him on a career trajectory, to take off. And, the song Breezin was a huge hit for George Benson as an instrumental song back in the day. Now, that's a song that I have played probably 1,000 times doing corporate events and weddings, whatever. It's an easy enough song. It's a simple, 4-chord song that has a nice guitar melody, and it allows you to solo at the level that you're at. So if you're a basic diatonic guitar player that can only play the major scale, you can solo over Breezin. If you're a complex fusion player with tons of, melodic knowledge and tons of chops, well, you can also solo over Breezin and take it wherever you want it. You can play it as inside or as outside, as they say in the jazz world, as you'd like. And it's a fun song to play. It's easy. And as far as an introduction to George Benson's guitar playing, that would certainly be a great place to start. If you have not listened to George Benson, I highly recommend it. But here is the latest news with his guitar shop on Reverb. The official George Benson Reverb shop is now live. And I can't help but comment on the fact that his guitar that he played that famous Breezin song on, the Gibson Johnny Smith Breezin, owned by George Benson. And it can now be yours. The guitar he used on that hit song, you can buy it yourself. It's just going to cost you $999,999. Quite a bargain. Now, I almost feel like George doesn't want to sell this that bad. And then, you do need $2,000 shipping. I almost feel like George is placing this out of reach because he doesn't want to sell it. And George, there's a video on YouTube where George tells about the story of getting the guitar. I guess a guy came to him and said, man, I need to sell my guitar. I need some money. And I think George Benson lets on that, I don't think he paid a ton of money for this guitar, but he told the guy, look, man, I've got a whole closet full of guitars. And he opened up the closet door and guitars were falling out of it. He said, I don't really need a guitar, but man, let me see that guitar. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you, and he quoted him a price, and the guy said, well, that's more money than they offer me down the street, at the music shop or the pawn shop or wherever the guy was trying to get rid of the guitar. And he says, I'll take it. And says George said, all right, here's your money. And so I can't even imagine that this was anywhere. It was probably $600 or $700 or $800 maybe back in the day. Back when he got that guitar, you could buy Les Pauls all day, all night long for $500. So I can't imagine he paid much more than that. But now he's asking $999,999. I mean, this really does seem like okay, well, I'll price this out of reach because I don't really want to sell this. And, here's the thing. Here's the listing. It says, about this listing, Johnny Smith Breezin guitar is owned by George Benson. This is the guitar that was used to record George's hit song, Breezin, an absolute piece of music history. This guitar is currently safely secure with the folks at Ibanez. Please inquire about shipping, as we will have to make special arrangements in order to safely transfer this rare, one-of-a-kind piece. All items in the official George Benson Reverb shop fully insured with delivery confirmation and a signed and embossed certificate of authenticity. Okay, so, I know for guitar, aficionados out there, they don't even tell you what year this thing was, and it is a beautiful guitar, but it's a beautiful jazz box. It's got this birthmark on the back side of the body, so you definitely, if you own that guitar, you would know that, hey, this is my guitar. It's got this birthmark on the back, but they don't. There's nothing in it, and it's in like a little museum. So maybe it's in the Ibanez Museum. I don't know, but yeah, it's in this. It's with the people of Ibanez. So maybe Ibanez was like, hey, give us that guitar. We want to analyze it. I don't know. I mean, George Benson has a long-standing relationship with Ibanez, and Ibanez made him his signature guitars, the Ibanez GB10 and the GB20. On this official George Benson Reverb shop, he's got a lot of cool guitars in there, mostly jazz boxes. There is now, and I didn't see this before, there's a PRS McCarty owned by George Benson, and he wants $10,000 for that. He's got a lot of guitars on here. Some of the more inexpensive guitars have sold. So there's a Takamine acoustic that's sold. There's a Yamaha acoustic that's sold. There's a Cordoba Iberia that's sold. There's a Merida Trajan that's been sold, but there's still a lot of guitars available. It seems like most of the least expensive guitars are now gone. So there were some D'Angelicos that were sold and that are now gone. There's an Eastman guitar up there for $4,000. It seems like the least expensive guitars are pretty much gone from the George Benson Reverb shop. But man, he's got one Ibanez Kimono guitar, and that is $15,000, and that's sold. He sold that guitar. His main touring guitar, he's asking $35,000. That's $35,000 for a Ibanez GB10. Now, I have to wonder, as an aging guitarist and seeing, him selling these, his main touring guitar, is George heading for retirement? And man, he's certainly on up there in age, and he is still performing. But, I'm sure he's like, man, maybe I need to just get one last big payday and sell some of these guitars that I'm sure this is just a small collection of his guitar collection. This is a small assembly of guitars that he thought, these would be guitars that people would want to own. And, you know, he's asking a lot for some of these guitars, but there were some fairly priced guitars. There are a few guitars around there's a David Gomes guitar for $2,500. There are some still affordable guitars up there. But the reality is, these stars, they start realizing, man, I don't know how much more time I have on earth. And man, can you imagine the day that Joe Bonamassa starts to sell his collection on Reverb? Oh my God. I just, every time that guy buys a new guitar, and it seems like people go to his shows to sell their family heirlooms. And, I think, why wouldn't the family just keep the guitar and pass it down? But I get it. At some point, people want to cash out, just like I think George Benson wants to cash out. I'm sure he's feeling the effects of aging. He's out there on the road. I haven't watched any recent performance clips of George Benson, but man, you can't help but look back and see some of those old clips of George Benson just ripping up the guitar and thinking, man, I'm sure he's not quite as nimble as he was back in the day. Man, it gets harder as you get older. But man, go check out the George Benson official Reverb shop. It is an interesting, the 10-time Grammy Award winning jazz guitar players. It's not exactly rock news, but it is news.